Notification came at 8:47 on a Friday night, and I remember the exact sound it made, that soft chime I'd assigned only to my husband. "Babe, this deal is going to run past midnight. Don't wait up. Love you." I read it twice. Then I looked up from my phone, across the grand ballroom of the Whitmore Hotel, past 200 people in black tie and evening gowns, past the ice sculpture centerpiece that was slowly losing its shape, and I found him. Standing near the bar, his hand on the small of someone's back, his lips brushing her temple the way they used to brush mine. The someone was Dana, my best friend since the 7th grade. The woman who held my bouquet at my wedding. The woman who called me crying last Thanksgiving because she said she felt so alone. Dana, in a gold dress I'd never seen, tilting her head back and laughing at something my husband whispered in her ear. I had not been supposed to be at this event. My colleague Priya had gotten food poisoning that afternoon and handed me her seat at the last minute, a charity gala hosted by one of our firm's largest clients. I had almost said no. My feet hurt. I was tired. I had leftover soup on the stove at home. I did not cry. That surprised me more than anything else. I stood there in the middle of that beautiful room, holding a glass of champagne I'd barely touched, and I felt something settle inside me like concrete hardening. Cold, solid, unmovable. I turned around and walked out before either of them saw me. The drive home took 23 minutes. I spent the first 10 trying to talk myself out of what I'd seen. Maybe it was innocent. Maybe I'd misread the body language. Maybe the lighting was strange, the angle was wrong, the champagne had already gone to my head. Then I thought about the past 8 months. The gym bag Marcus started keeping in his car. The nights he came home smelling like something floral that wasn't my perfume. The way Dana had started canceling our standing Sunday brunches, always with a different excuse, always slightly too casual about it. The weekend in March when they'd both been unavailable at the same time. Marcus at a conference, Dana supposedly visiting her mother in Phoenix. I had never put those two absences together until now, sitting in my own driveway in the dark with the engine still running. I did not go inside right away. I sat in that car and I made myself think clearly, because I knew that the worst thing I could do was walk through that door and start tearing things apart. Emotion was the enemy of evidence. I had spent 12 years as a forensic accountant. I knew better than anyone that the moment you let anger drive the car, you lose control of where it goes. So I breathed, and I made a list. The first thing I did the following morning was call in sick to work. Marcus had come home at 1 a.m., slipping into bed in the dark, and I had lain perfectly still beside him with my eyes open, cataloging every sound he made. He fell asleep in 4 minutes. I had always envied how easily he slept. After he left for the office, I went to our home filing cabinet. We had shared finances for 6 years, joint checking, joint savings, a brokerage account we'd opened together when we bought the house. I pulled out the last 3 months of statements and sat down at the kitchen table with a highlighter and a legal pad. The numbers had been talking for a long time. I just hadn't been listening. There were transfers I didn't recognize. Small ones at first, 200 here, 300 there, the kind that would blur into the background of a busy month. But when I laid 3 months side by side, a pattern emerged that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. The transfers went to an account I couldn't identify. The total over 90 days was just over $14,000. I photographed every page. Then I went to my laptop and pulled up our shared cloud storage. Something Marcus used for work documents, something I technically had access to but had never thought to look at. It took me 40 minutes of scrolling to find what I wasn't looking for, a folder labeled Our Investments. Inside it, lease agreements, in Marcus's name only. An apartment in the Riverside district, signed 7 months ago, monthly rent was $2,200. There was also a document that stopped my blood cold. A draft letter from a family law attorney addressed to Marcus, outlining asset separation strategies in anticipation of dissolution proceedings. He wasn't just cheating on me. He had already begun building the exit, quietly, carefully, brick by brick, while I sat across the dinner table from him talking about vacation plans and whether we should refinance the mortgage. I closed the laptop. I walked to the bathroom. I gripped the edge of the sink and looked at myself in the mirror for a long time. Then I called my college roommate, Simone, who was now a family law attorney in Chicago. Simone did not gasp. She did not tell me I must be mistaken. She listened to everything I said in the same quiet, focused way she'd always had, even back in our dorm room during finals week. And when I finished, she said, "Don't touch the joint accounts. Don't move anything. And do not let him know you know." "For how long?" I asked. "Until we know what he knows," she said. "Forward me those photos." Over the next 3 weeks, I became a different version of myself. Outwardly, I was the same, warm, present, making dinner, asking about his day. I laughed at his jokes. I kissed him goodbye each morning. Every performance I gave could have won an award, and I think what frightened me most was how easy it became, how natural it felt to smile at a man I no longer recognized. Inwardly, I was building a case. Simone connected me with a forensic accountant named Tom, who worked independently and owed her a favor. Within a week, Tom had traced the mystery account to a joint savings account opened in Marcus's name and Dana's name 6 months prior. They had been depositing money together. My money, our money. But it was something else Tom found that changed the shape of everything. He called me on a Tuesday afternoon, and his voice had that particular flatness that professionals use when they're trying not to alarm you. "I need you to look at something," he said. "Can you check the beneficiary designations on your life insurance policy?" I pulled up the portal that night after Marcus went to bed. Primary beneficiary on my $2 million policy had been changed 14 weeks ago. It still said Marcus Delaney, but the secondary beneficiary, the one who would receive everything if Marcus were to predecease me or be otherwise unable to collect, had been quietly updated. It said Dana Whitfield. I sat with that for a very long time. I had been taking a daily supplement for about 5 months, a powder Dana had given me with great enthusiasm, telling me it was a mitochondrial support blend her nutritionist had recommended. I'd been mixing it into my morning smoothie without a second thought because Dana had always been the health-conscious one, always sending me articles and product recommendations. It was just what she did. After I saw that beneficiary change, I stopped taking it. Within 10 days, the persistent nausea I'd been chalking up to stress began to ease. The headaches that had been blurring my vision 2 or 3 times a week, gone. The bone-deep fatigue that had made me feel like I was walking through fog, lifting, slowly, like a curtain being drawn back. I had the remaining powder tested at a private lab through Simone's recommendation. The results took 4 days. When I opened the email, I read the words 3 times before I let myself believe them. The supplement contained a compound, not dangerous enough to be acutely lethal, but enough over time to cause cognitive impairment, memory lapses, and what would appear to a doctor to be the early stages of a neurological disorder. They had been trying to make me look unstable, unreliable, the kind of woman whose signature on a power of attorney document might later be explained away as the act of someone who wasn't well. I printed the lab report. I added it to the folder I had been building. Then I called Simone again. And this time I said, "I need you to get me in front of someone in law enforcement." Detective Carol Myers had the kind of face that gave nothing away, which I found deeply reassuring. She sat across from me in a small conference room at the DA's office and read through everything I'd brought. The bank statements, the lease, the draft separation letter, the lab report, the insurance documents, without interrupting, without reacting. Turning pages with the methodical patience of someone who had heard many stories and understood which details mattered. When she set the last page down, she looked at me and said, "How long have you been sitting on this?" "About 6 weeks." She nodded slowly. "And your husband doesn't know that you know?" "No." "Good." She folded her hands. "I want to be honest with you. The financial stuff is solid. The supplement, that's going to depend heavily on whether we can establish intent. But the insurance beneficiary combined with the compound in that powder gives us a thread worth pulling." She paused. "Are you willing to help us pull it?" I said yes before she finished the sentence. The plan was not complicated, but it required me to do the hardest thing I had ever done. Wait. Keep pretending. Keep kissing my husband goodbye and texting Dana the occasional meme and acting like a woman who had no idea her life was being quietly dismantled around her. The wire went on a Wednesday morning. Detective Myers had coached me carefully, what to say, what not to say, how to guide the conversation without leading it anywhere that would compromise the recording. I had practiced the night before in my bathroom, speaking quietly to my own reflection, keeping my voice steady. I asked Marcus over breakfast whether he thought we should update our estate documents. "We've been meaning to for years," I said. Maybe it was time to finally sit down with an attorney. He was very still for a moment. Then he smiled and said, "You know, I was just thinking the same thing." "I was actually looking at the life insurance portal," I said, keeping my eyes on my coffee cup. "Just to review the numbers. I noticed the beneficiary section. I must have forgotten. Did we change the secondary at some point?" The pause was only 2 seconds, but I had spent 6 weeks learning how to read him. "I don't think so," he said. "Might have been an auto update when they changed the system. I'll look into it." "Sure," I said. No rush. That evening, I had a separate conversation on my phone, a call I allowed to happen while the recording was still running. Marcus called Dana. I know because Detective Myers told me afterward what was said, and because they had, by that point, obtained a warrant. He told her I'd been looking at the insurance documents. He told her they might need to move faster. He used the word window. He used the phrase before she puts it together. Dana said, "Does she seem suspicious?" Marcus said, "No, you know how she is. She never sees what's right in front of her." They came for him on a Thursday morning, 4 days later. 2 plainclothes detectives at his office, in front of his colleagues, just before the 11 o'clock meeting he'd mentioned at breakfast. I was not there to see it. I had asked not to be. Dana was picked up at her apartment an hour later. I was sitting in Simone's kitchen when Simone got the call confirming both arrests. She came and sat across from me at the table, and she took my hands in hers, and she didn't say anything for a moment. Outside the window, the neighbor's dog was barking at something in the yard, a completely ordinary sound on a completely extraordinary morning. "It's done," Simone said. I nodded. I wasn't sure what I was supposed to feel. I had been bracing for this moment for weeks, imagining it would break something open in me, grief, relief, rage, something large and overwhelming. What I felt instead was very quiet, like a room after everyone has finally left. The legal proceedings took 14 months. Marcus was charged with financial fraud, wire fraud, criminal conspiracy, and, because of the supplement and what the DA's office determined was a deliberate and premeditated attempt to impair my judgment and health in preparation for forcing a power of attorney transfer, attempted assault by poisoning. In the state where we lived, that charge carried significant weight when combined with the insurance documentation and the evidence of financial planning. The DA argued, and the evidence supported, that the end game had never simply been a divorce that left me with less. The end game had been a divorce, or worse, that left me with nothing. Marcus took a plea. 18 years, with the possibility of parole review at 12. His attorney called it a reasonable outcome, given the evidence. I sat in the courtroom and watched him sign the paperwork, and I thought about the morning 6 weeks into our marriage when he'd made me pancakes shaped like hearts and left them on the counter with a note that said, "Just because." I thought about it not with longing, but with the particular grief of understanding that you can love a version of someone who never truly existed. Dana pled guilty to conspiracy charges and criminal facilitation of assault. She received 5 years, with 2 suspended, and a restitution order that would follow her for the rest of her adult life. On the day she was sentenced, she looked at me from across the courtroom, the only time our eyes met through the entire process, and I held her gaze until she looked away. I did not feel satisfaction. I want to be honest about that, because I think that's what people expect, that there's some clean, bright moment of triumph when the gavel comes down, when justice arrives wrapped up neatly. What I felt was more complicated. Tired, mostly, and something I can only describe as grief for a version of my life that had turned out to be a stage set with nothing solid behind the walls. The house sold in March, 14 months after the arrests. I had already moved into an apartment by then. Small, 3rd floor, a window in the kitchen that caught the afternoon light and turned the whole room gold around 4 o'clock. I had a cat by then, too. A gray tabby I'd adopted somewhat impulsively on a Tuesday evening, who had immediately claimed the sunniest spot in the apartment as his own. I named him Fletcher. He had no strong opinions about anything except breakfast time and where I was allowed to sit. I went back to work while the case was still in progress. My colleagues knew something had happened. In a firm as small as ours, things moved through the air, but no one pressed me, and I was grateful for the ordinary rhythm of the work. Numbers made sense in a way that people for a long time did not. I found comfort in the precision of it. Debit and credit, always in balance. Everything that leaves has somewhere it's supposed to go. Simone came to visit in the spring, and we sat on my little balcony with wine and a grocery store cheese board and talked until midnight about everything and nothing. At some point, she asked me what I wished I had done differently. I thought about it honestly. I wish I'd trusted my instincts earlier, I said. There were so many things I explained away because it was easier to believe the explanation than to sit with the alternative. The fatigue. The way Dana kept canceling on me. The way Marcus started sleeping so easily when I could barely close my eyes. I turned my wine glass in my hands. I think I told myself a story about my life because the true story was too frightening to read. Simone nodded. She didn't offer a reframe or a silver lining. She just said, "That's a very human thing to do." "I know," I said, "but I'm done doing it." There is something I want to say to anyone who finds themselves in the middle of a story they don't fully understand yet. The confusion is part of it. The way the floor tilts and you can't quite get your footing. The way you keep revising your memory of ordinary moments, that breakfast, that phone call, that evening when something felt slightly off but you couldn't name it. All of that is the process of your mind catching up to something your instincts already knew. Give it the time it needs. Don't rush yourself into action that's driven by pain instead of clarity. But also, don't wait so long that you lose the evidence. The window closes faster than you think. I am 34 years old. I own an apartment with a cat who judges my taste in television. I have a job I am genuinely good at, a best friend in Chicago who answers the phone on the second ring, and a kitchen window that turns gold every afternoon at 4 o'clock. I lost things I cannot get back. I know that. There is no version of this story where loss doesn't live in the middle of it. But I also know this. I did not let someone else write my ending. That part was always mine.